Chapter 6. Bad Weather Coming. The next day Emma didn't feel very well. She felt sick to her stomach, and her body trembled and felt strange, as if she'd really been in the old stable and not just dreamt about it. Her dad saw how pale she was and suggested that she stay home from school. Emma didn't need any convincing. She had no desire to leave Troy, even though she kept trying to tell herself that everything was fine now, in broad daylight, with Troy outside in the pasture. She had this cold, creepy feeling down her spine, as if something horrible could happen at any time. But if the dream was true, then it was the stable that was dangerous, not the pasture. It was inside the stable that the bay horse had attacked, and Troy had done the same, in his own stable. Emma decided to try to find out more about the bay horse and Amelia. Had the horse killed her, as Emma suspected? She knew that her dad had read some of the old story about the ranch before they decided to move here. Emma was disappointed, however, to learn that her dad couldn't remember having read anything in particular about the stable. He promised to dig out the papers and check it out as soon as he had the time. Emma had to leave it at that. She spent the day outside in the pasture with Troy. She was on her guard the entire time, watching for any sign of Troy being different. But Troy was his normal, mild-mannered self. There was no hint of evil to be seen in his dark, beautiful eyes. He was just enjoying the nice weather. Emma decided to leave him outside that night. Until she could find out what had actually happened to Amelia and the bay horse, she thought it safer to keep him away from the stable. Nothing dangerous could happen in the pasture. She felt increasingly sure about that. But the weather gods had other plans. Late in the afternoon, dark clouds appeared on the horizon, and the air grew warm and oppressive. "Looks like we've got a big thunderstorm coming," said her dad after dinner. "We'd better make sure we have our flashlights ready in case we have a power outage." "As if we need a thunderstorm for a power outage," mumbled Emma in a grouchy voice. She'd looked forward to watching her favorite TV show, but just as it got to the best part, there was a flicker on the screen, and it turned black. It took almost half an hour before the power came back on, and by then the show was over. "Tomorrow everything will be taken care of," said her dad. "The repairman will be here to fix the problem, whatever it is. You'd better get Troy into the stable, though, don't you think, before the storm comes?" Emma looked out the window. It was almost dark outside. The clouds, which had been dark before, were now a sickly, deep purple color. It was obvious that a big storm was coming. That much was clear. Emma didn't want to put Troy in the stable at all, but she knew that it could be dangerous for him to be outside in such bad weather. If lightning struck the old oak tree by the pasture, for instance, she couldn't even stand to think about it. But what if lightning strikes the stable? Emma looked at her dad. "I don't think there's much chance of that. Lightning usually seeks out the highest points," said Frank. "The hilltop over there is much more exposed than these houses are. As long as we stay indoors, we'll be safe." Emma hurried outside to get Troy, who was already stepping nervously about in the pasture. Clearly he'd noticed that something was in the air. "Come on," said Emma, reaching out her hand. "You can come into your cozy, dry stable now. You'll be safe there," she said, hoping it was the truth. Quickly she filled Troy's hay net and made sure the automatic water bowl worked. She was just about to say good night to her horse and go inside when the first bolt of lightning shot across the sky. Troy jerked uneasily as the thunder rumbled in the distance. Emma looked at him. If he was this nervous now, then how would he be when the storm came closer? What if he panicked and hurt himself? She couldn't leave him alone in the stable. Emma ran inside to tell her dad that she was going to stay with Troy until the storm was over. "I'll come with you," he said, grabbing a flashlight. "I don't want you to be out there by yourself." Emma was relieved. She had dreaded being in the stable alone, because what if the dream was true? What if Troy actually did attack her, as he had done in the dream? But nothing bad could happen as long as her dad was there, could it? It was a really bad storm. Emma had never experienced anything like it. For a while the rolls of thunder were so close that she expected lightning to strike the stable at any moment. Troy was frightened, but Emma kept stroking and reassuring him, managing to keep the panic at bay, and finally the storm blew over. Troy calmed down, and after a while Frank said, "That's it. I think it should be safe to go to bed now." Emma gave Troy a final good-night hug and followed her dad gratefully to the house. She was so tired she could barely keep her eyes open. Tired and relieved. Nothing had happened. Troy was safe, and he hadn't made the slightest attempt to attack her. So it had just been a scary dream after all, and not a forewarning. Oh, how wonderful! Deep down in Emma's subconscious, a little voice was trying to say to her, "Watch out! It isn't over yet." But Emma was so exhausted she didn't register the voice. She plopped into bed and fell asleep instantly.